This episode of The Capsule in Conversation is brought to you by Harrogate Spring Water. Harrogate is the home of the British Spa and Britain's premium natural source water. Hello everyone, welcome back to The Capsule in Conversation. I'm Natalie Anderson and today I'm joined by actress, filmmaker and women's health activist Mika Simmons to talk sex, smears and speaking out. So settle down, turn us up and get ready to join in with our conversation. I hope you're all well and have had a lovely week. We are gearing up for International Women's Day tomorrow and this year's theme is Choose to Challenge. And today's special guest is the perfect lady to have with us as she spent the last 7 years challenging people's perception of women's bodies and women's health after sadly losing her mother to ovarian cancer at the age of just 54. She's an award-winning actress and filmmaker and founder of the Lady Garden Foundation charity and the Happy Vagina podcast. It is the fabulous Mika Simmons. Hi, Mika.
Hi, Nat. Great start. Great introduction with a ping from the email over the top. Yeah. I hope you leave it in.
Don't you worry. We like to be as unfiltered as possible. And I'm sure in this chat today, we're going to be quite unfiltered. So
unfiltered.
Thank you so much for being with me today. As I said in our introduction, it's International Women's Day tomorrow, which is an amazing day, I think, for us to kind of take stock of women's achievements. How important is it to you that we recognise women on that day?
Well, for me, because as you've just said, I've been working for the last 7 years campaigning around women's health. I've been on the rock face of it. So trying to get people to come to a breakfast to celebrate International Women's Day 7 years ago was barely possible. No one wanted to come. The people that worked on the charity with me, they were like, what for? I've got so much to do. And then over the past 7 years, it's got bigger and bigger to the extent that 2 years ago when I hosted a breakfast, people were like, I've been booked for 6 months already to kind of speak and do celebrative things. And I think that's an amazing gift that we've got as women, that we have this day to celebrate the work that we're all doing and still talk about what needs to be done in the future. And before the pandemic, we were moving towards International Women's Month. And that seems to have gone off the radar for this year's International Women's Day because people are really struggling and there's a lot going on. But one of the things that I have aligned myself to since the pandemic is bringing women's issues to the fore even more. I've stepped up my game because I think we're in a period where this is a dangerous period. Periods of great national trauma, other issues that need to be focused on can be really sidelined. And to a certain extent, that's right, because we're in a period of national trauma where we're trying to right-size our nation and our nation's health. However, it would be an absolute tragedy to let all the work that women have done over the last 10 years to bring women's health and bring, women's work issues to the fore just to go by the wayside.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And that's why it's so important to have platforms, like yours, like what we're trying to do with the capsule, because if the government can't give it that attention, then I feel the responsibility then is down to us to kind of go, right, okay, well then we'll talk about it amongst ourselves and we'll get it out there. Because as you say, we can't afford to slip backwards. I mean, it's so disheartening to hear that women and working women have lost out so much during this pandemic, losing jobs, having to juggle being put on furlough or being made redundant and juggling schoolwork, as well as it's just so disheartening when you think how far we've come and then this pandemic to have kind of set us back so many years. But, obviously we are dedicated to moving forward, and that is why tomorrow is going to be an amazing day and that, we can all celebrate. And I do love the theme for this year as well, choose to challenge, like get out there and challenge people's perceptions and challenge the narrative. I think it's such a great theme for this year. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. But I was also a bit like, what's new?
Yeah. Yeah, I do know what you mean. You're like, we've kind of been doing this all along.
Doing that. but you know, uh, that would be an arrogant thing for me to really deeply feel and think, because I work within the movement, and so therefore many of my daily conversations are around how we can make change for women. But International Women's Day should give access to women who haven't found their voice yet, or who might be struggling with a partner at home in a domestic situation and really not have a voice around that. And just so these choose to challenge kind of theme, it may not be for me, it might be for someone who's more vulnerable than me, and it might bring them closer towards having a voice and being able to speak up for themselves. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Now, as I said in my introduction, you know, your career, primarily you're an actress, you're a filmmaker, and you began your acting career studying theatre studies and English in Leeds, which is my neck of the woods. And as a Somerset girl, how was that move for you moving up to Yorkshire?
Well, I was desperate to go to drama school. I mean, just desperate. And my father wouldn't let me. So I don't come from a very affluent background. We're okay, we're middle class, and mostly we couldn't afford it. And I think my father was quite frightened about the fees, and also wanted me to be sensible. And I wasn't very sensible as a teenager, so I can kind of see why he was trying to guide me towards being sensible, because I was a little rebellious. So I went to Leeds slightly not resentful, but slightly not really wanting to be at university. And I found Leeds quite harsh to begin with. It's you know, the summers were very short.
Yes.
But then I really fell in love with the city. And I suppose because I grew up in between Bath and Bristol, which are two relatively small towns, Leeds is a small town, but with quite a cosmopolitan feel. And I went when it was just changing. I did go, you know, that they were just opening the Harvey Nichols, and there were some really cool nightclubs like Back to Basics and Vague.
Oh, yes, Back to Basics.
Yeah.
Oh my God, those were the days.
Yeah. I used to go to Vague, which was a kind of I guess it was a trans club on a Friday night, go dancing till 6 a.m, and then go and teach drama to kids on Saturday morning. So I had a good time. And then my course at Leeds, I did English and theatre studies, and there were only 12 of us on the course, and we were based in a church across from the English literature department, and it was wild. I mean, we just made theatre. Anything in going back in my second year, I just decided to put a play on, and they gave me access to absolutely everything I needed. And I did a Sam Shepard play, which was a series of love poems, and we were wild with it. It was really anarchic. And so I really fell in love with it. And then it obviously has a great, the West Yorkshire Playhouse. I worked at the West Yorkshire Playhouse with Jude Kelly, and Kay Magson was there casting, and Matthew Watchers was the associate director under Jude. So actually I had a really fantastic experience there, even though I kind of went a little bit like stompy. I want to be in London at RADA.
I mean, you did obviously go off to drama school after that, you know, and have, like I said, forged this incredible career now. But your brother is actually Keir Simmons, the journalist and news correspondent. And something that really struck me was the pair of you are really clearly drawn to telling people's stories in whichever guises, whether that's as a correspondent or as an actor or as an activist. I mean, do you think that's part of your upbringing? Like, what was your home life like?
Well, we're Irish, and the Irish are great storytellers. So it's possible that it's something that comes through our family line. But actually, I would say we're both interested in making change. So I fell in love with the theatre when I was young, because I could see, and film, because I could see that it was a way to change the way someone felt about the world or themselves. And I think most actors get into the industry wanting to be in that level of highbrow production where they're actually really impacting people. The majority don't. You end up doing stuff that doesn't have that level of impact, or it may just change the way someone feels. Just going to see a show is as we all know right now, it would just be great to see any show, any bad show. And with Keir as well, I would say the same thing, speaking on his behalf, that actually he had ambitions to be a politician before he found journalism at Goldsmiths, and I think he is a bit of a warrior like me. I think he wants to help people. So, and that's really, both of our parents were change makers. My mom was a feminist, and my father was very active in the feminist movement as well. And they both did quite a lot of work in terms of equal opportunities in the work that they did. So really campaigned for a better life for people.
I mean, what an incredible thing to have your dad as part of that movement. You know, it's so important. It's one of the things I was going to speak to you about a bit later on, actually, is how important it is to have men at the heart of these conversations that we're discussing, you know, not to alienate guys from women's health discussions. You know, it's really important that they are very much at the center of it as well, because, you know, brothers, fathers, lovers, anything, they have to be just as educated as us, don't they?
Well, I don't think you can have freedom for one gender and not the other. We've proved that, haven't we? So if we don't all do it together and fight and work towards liberation, equality, and freedom for every single human being, not just gender, but across the world, then no one will ever really be free, because the ties that bind work in both directions.
Yeah, completely. After drama school, you know, you went on to have notable success in your acting career, appearing in dramas such as Unforgotten, Channel 4's BAFTA-winning Falling Apart, and Berlin Film Festival winner Balcony. However, in 2014, you added another huge area to your work as you set up the Lady Garden Foundation, which was founded after you sadly lost your mum to ovarian cancer, as I said in the beginning, at just 54. I mean, tell me about that period of your life and, you know, being galvanized to set the foundation up.
Well, I was only 27 when we lost mum, so I was very ill prepared for it, and I just started working as an actor, and I was starting to fly. You know, I think youth, we create with our intention in our youth. You know, I love the Gloria Steinem quote, because dreaming is a form of planning. And I think when we're younger, those dreams really do give us the access to planning in a way that as we get older and life gets more hectic, sometimes we can lose that kind of intention work that we do when we're younger. And I just done a really big period drama. I had an amazing agent, and I was flying. I was off and running. I'd been to Saint Tropez for the first time that summer with a group of friends. You know, it's just that moment in your life when you were like,
Yay!
yeah, it was a really, and then to go home and have mum tell me that she had stage 4 ovarian cancer was, it was a life-changing moment that I will never recover from. Also, she, bless her, she was such a strong woman that she absolutely didn't think that it was going to take her. So it was 9 months, and it was very harrowing, because not only were we losing our mum, and Keira and I tagged teamed and nursed her. She was very frightened, and she didn't really want too many other people around her. So it was only friends and family. So we really stepped up, and she didn't accept the fact that it was happening. So I think, I wonder what it would, my dad is still around, thank God, touching all the wood, but I just wonder what it would be like if she hadn't resisted it. I completely support the fact that she did. She wanted to live. She was not ready to die, but it meant that period of time was really, really harrowing, to watch somebody be so distraught that it was apparent that they were going to die. And actually, she was put on a medication, which was a trial, which we were very excited about. And she was given the all clear. And she went to America to see some friends. And by the time she got back 3 weeks later, she was completely, their words, riddled with cancer.
Oh, God.
And she died quite soon after that. But those sorts of disappointments, the shock that you get from them, that you've spent the last 7 months wondering if your mum's going to make it, you're told she is, and then really almost immediately you're told again that she's not. And that was a lot for my system. And one of the things that I've understood as I've grown into the grief and allowed myself to process what really happened during that time is nobody else was losing. Of course, there's a few people around you who may have lost a child or a sibling or a parent, a couple, but mostly at that age, no one has lost in that way. So no one had a vocabulary to help me talk about it. So I just shut down. I went completely mute. I was in therapy at the time, post drama school, obviously. That's sort of like par for the course. So I was in drama school, but I In therapy rather, but I wish now I'd got bereavement counselling. A girlfriend of mine, a dear friend of mine, she at the same age gap, so 15 years after losing her dad, she went back for bereavement counselling, and she said it was like nothing else she'd ever had before. So she'd also had counselling, but that actually there's something about bereavement counselling that it brings you into line with your understanding of life and death. And now I know this sounds crazy, but I even at that age, I just never even imagined that she'd go.
Oh my God, why would you though? Do you know what I mean? It's 54, it's such a young age, and as you said, you're in this amazing dream, and you've been in Saint Tropez, and this it wasn't a reality. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose as well, stage 4 is obviously very advanced, and if it
Mm,
was such a short amount of time, 9 months, I expect that again you didn't have that long period of time to kind of grieve somebody's passing or see them like for a longer period of time, and that must have been so shocking. We lost our granddad over 10 years ago now, but I was ready at the time. I'd seen him suffer so much, and I was ready to let him go to sleep. Now I can't imagine what I would have been like earlier, and if it had been such a short amount of time like what you went through. And there'll be
mm.
so many people like you who they there's a diagnosis and only months later, and there'll be people like you now, even in during this pandemic, where they had loved ones and 2 weeks later they went into the hospital and didn't come home. And as you said, trying to kind of deal with those emotions is very, very difficult.
It's very, very the shock. We're not given tool. We're not really we're not taught how our nervous systems work. It's not something they teach us at school, and they should, because actually when you have a shock like that, you go into fight or flight. That's your animalistic side. Actually, what we're doing a lot in the modern world is freeze. So a severe fight or flight you come out of, you can't stay in it, because the level of intensity of adrenaline that your body has to use to be in fight flight, you kind of have to come out of it. But fight or flight was a system in our body that was created for prehistoric times when there were
Yeah.
tigers to fight, right? So like you had actually somewhere to put all the adrenaline. What we do now is we just freeze. And I would say that I froze for almost 10 years until I started the Lady Garden Foundation. Actually, really my healing started, and I was able to find the space to understand myself better and move through what had happened to me by starting to take action and helping other women. I don't think I really started to heal until then. I think I was, even though it was 10 years, I think I was still in shock.
I can again completely understand that you would feel like that. Taking action is such a powerful thing to do, and it does help move you forward, because it helps you process that feeling of being out of control to suddenly kind of have a little bit of control back. Now, going back to your mum, did she talk about any symptoms, or because what was your understanding of ovarian cancer at that time?
I didn't have any understanding of it at all. I don't think I even really knew what an ovary was.
Mm.
Honestly, like I mean, I'm sure if someone sat me down and asked me, I could have told you, but it definitely wasn't something that I was thinking about a lot. And I was away at drama school and then living in London. It was my first year out of drama school, and I came home a couple of times, and I remember mum sitting in the bath because she had severe cystitis, and she had a new boyfriend. So my father and my mother had split up maybe 3 years before she died, and she had a new boyfriend, so she was having a lot of sex.
Mm.
I know, which was a thing as well to try and kind of get my head round.
Yeah.
um you know, she put it all down to the fact that she was more sexually active. She went to the doctors told her that she had fibroids, and fibroids are something that are very normal, and can just pass. Sometimes you need some work done on them, but often they just pass. So she did know that there was something wrong, but she did also ignore it. And there wasn't very much campaigning back then around gynecological cancers. to be honest with you, Natalie, at that stage, there wasn't a huge amount of breast cancer awareness. People were still saying the C word and whispering cancer as though you could catch it if you said it out loud, as though as if you said cancer to someone, you'd get it too, you know?
Yeah, very much so. And as you said, having experienced what you did and then having that time in between, being able to then take action and set up the foundation, tell me about that moment and kind of what your mission was from then.
So I'd been thinking for quite a long time that I wanted to do something campaigny. I hadn't ever thought about fundraising. I don't think I am the best fundraiser. The other women on the board, the founding board of Lady Garden Foundation, are definitely better fundraisers than me. But my political voice had started to come through. I think as I was thawing out and getting over the shock of losing my mother, my voice as a feminist was coming back. And I wanted to do something that would really educate women. And I was very disappointed that nothing had changed in terms of awareness around symptoms for all women's cancers, definitely for all gynecological cancers, and for me, ovarian cancer as a primary. It just transpired that my next door neighbour in the house that I'm still in now, she was working at the Royal Marsden. She was finishing her dissertation, her PhD with Avon into breast cancer. I told her that I'd lost mum to ovarian cancer, and she said, I'm gonna focus on that. That's the thing that I want to change for women. I want to change the future of ovarian cancer. And we were stood out in the hallway when it happened, and I don't know, it's just like the synchronicity of it is really amazing. So she asked my brother and I if we would do something for her, and what she really needed was some money. Kira and I talked about how we could do that, and at the time it was a period of time when charity fundraising was going very much towards specific. So there were people saying, your money will buy this incubator, like at Great Ormond Street. It was becoming a time when people were no longer happy or willing to just funnel money into charities willy-nilly. I think it was around the time that the internet was exploding, so people were being able to see where their money was going, not visually, but I think the naivety of the individual that we just kind of quite blindly would give money to a charity. And also there'd been some terrible scandals, so people were starting to ask and demand, where does my money go? And so this thing about attaching, this is what we will spend your money on, was quite big. So Kira and I started to talk about, with Susie, Dr. Susanna Banerjee, my next door neighbour, wonderful woman, and also lead gynecologist at the Royal Marsden. We started talking about what we could fund for her that would make the greatest change. And the things that we were talking about at the time were similar to incubators, kind of beds and things like that. And then it became quickly apparent that my brother wasn't going to have the time to do it as a journalist. He was at ITN then, and now he's at NBC. But as you know, if a story comes in, he has to go.
You're off. Yeah.
So one day a woman called Claire Beckwith actually got in touch with me about a product that she was interested in telling me about, and I found out in that meeting that her mother had died quite recently of cancer, of a gynecological cancer. And I said to her, would she want to work on the project with me? And she said absolutely yes, and that she'd ask her sister Tamara. And I had known that really, really great girlfriend of mine, Chloe Delavines, had precancerous cervical cells. So I asked Chloe, and I'd known that Jenny Halpin, who is at the moment our trustee chair, had some gynecological concerns. So I asked her. She worked in the PR world. It seemed like a good decision. And my brother got pretty much sidelined. Here come the girls. And we were like an amazing team. At the beginning, it was like everybody brought something different to the table. I worked incredibly hard on the project for 5 years. I did it for 3 years without taking an income from it at all. And then I gave up a small business I had, and I worked incredibly hard on it, Natalie. I put absolutely everything I could into it, and I was available for the project 24/7. And I don't think I would have done if I hadn't had what I call the God nods. So, people say, oh, it must be easy because you've got Chloe, on your board, but actually that's not true. There's a lot of people fighting for stuff. I think the timing was really essential. We were right on the cusp of kind of this new wave of feminism. So now we probably use the word vagina. We couldn't have said that back then and have got the kind of rise that we did. So we called it Lady Garden so that we could just invite people in and then talk about the real anatomy. We had to do that back then. So I think it was the timing, really. It was an amazing group of women, a lot of hard work, and the timing.
You worked so hard across that 5 years and raising the profile of the foundation. I mean, you garnered kind of support from people like Alexa Chung and Margot Robbie. And I think probably, were you those people adding their voices to your campaign? How did you feel about that, given that you were the one, working so hard, and then to elevate it in that way?
It was so exciting at the time. We were really lucky. Jenny Halpin was friends with and the owner of a big department store, who made these sweatshirts saying Lady Garden for us. And I think we were probably one of the first social media campaigns that kind of went a bit viral, and it was really exciting. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. I'd just been sent scripts and said lines and done what I was told, and and it was an incredibly exciting time and really fun. And they sold out and no one thought they would, and it was a really exciting time. And the women that supported it, I believe every single one of them, from the women that you just mentioned, all of those celebrities who supported it, through to every single woman that bought it or just talked about it, actually created Lady Garden. That was a moment in time where actually women did something together and created that together, because it was a melting pot that you couldn't, if you'd taken one of those elements away, it wouldn't have worked in the same way. And that was a beautiful thing.
And the message is so powerful, because I had no idea there was like 5 gynecological cancers. I had no idea about that. And that, when I visited the foundation website, I was just blown away by, even still now, obviously you've worked tirelessly and campaigned, but even still now, there's things that I just looked at and went, I didn't know that. I didn't know you could get cancer of the vulva. I didn't know things like that. And people didn't talk about things like that. And the fact that you and I are having this conversation now is a brilliant thing. And that does bring me on to, the Happy Vagina podcast, which is the best thing ever. I love it so much, honestly. My mum, so I just have to tell you this, I don't normally use the word vagina, right? So this whole thing for me, this last few years with developing my business, my mum's going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I finally got her to say things like that, because my mum's very open and I've always been quite shy. And so for me, your platform has allowed me to kind of really embrace it and be bold about it, because it's helped me kind of claim it back, if that makes sense, and I'm sure that was kind of a lot of what you set out to do.
I definitely wanted to be working in a wider space to just cancer, and I felt that as a filmmaker and an actress, I was the right person to be doing that. And I wanted to start coming a little bit back to, so I'd worked really hard for 5 years, basically running a charity. I don't know how to run a charity. I still don't know today. But I was like, how can I bring back my creativity into this voice that I found? And I wanted it to be very empowering. But I think one of the key things for me also was a deep respect of the individual. So I think that's a really beautiful thing, that you're shy. And what I saw, one of the things that I saw that was happening was that there, with the feminist movement, was that there was a boldness that was intimidating to other women. And I feel very protective of all women, and that women and men should be able to sit comfortably in their own skin and to dig really deep and work out what their truth is, and be able to say that to the world. This is my truth. You have to look underneath the hood, pardon the pun. We're not going there. That's not where I'm going.
Well, I was prepared for anything, so go on.
We can. But I think, you have to work out, if you're shy, I think you have to work out if it's steeped in shame. And if it's steeped in shame, I believe that you should look at it and do something about it. And that doesn't mean that you have to walk around naked. It means look Look at it. It means challenge. Interestingly, for International Women's Day, it means challenge yourself. Look, become someone who understands yourself. Don't sit in shame. It's so bad for us sitting in shame. So with the Happy Vagina, my intention absolutely 100% was to try and make sure that people felt they could approach it. It was inclusive, and that there were all sorts of different voices going on, and that it was an encouragement to become yourself, and in that lies freedom.
Completely. I mean, I love that, again, that you have a cross section of people. You know, you do have guys on there as well, and they're talking about their experiences, and you do have experts and sex experts. And as you were saying to me earlier, you know, you've had a chat with a feminist pornographer, which again, the fact, even for me in this moment, like I say, my friends will listen to this and be like, that is not the girl that we know. But I'm really proud of how far I've come in terms of being able to be open about these subjects, because even 2 years ago I couldn't bear anybody talking about periods. Now I'm like, let's talk about it, and I'm constantly talking with my friends about women's health or women's, you know, issues, reproductive issues, because I think it's really important that we do share these stories, because there are so many parts of the world where these subjects are so taboo, and you know, we should be able to kind of lift the lid on these conversations. And you've attracted, you know, amazing fans from across the world, including the brilliant Gwyneth Paltrow, who I absolutely love, and she's a huge advocate for, you know, sex, self-love. The fact she's got a new vibrator out with the meme, which I'm
obsessed. I'm obsessed.
Amazing. And you know, again, like, for your conversations, I just think it's amazing the cross-section of women as well that you're able to reach, because as you say, a few years ago your platform probably wouldn't have necessarily got the elevation, because we've moved so far forward though that we are having these discussions. And I mean, how does that make you feel?
I'm obsessed with my own project. Is that bad?
No, you should be.
I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I find it really difficult not to start work. I'm still actually, you know, I've still got an amazing agent, and I'm still going up for loads of acting jobs, and I've directed 2 shorts now. So I've got that part of my career, but the Happy Vagina brings me such an immense amount of joy, and having women internationally support it's kind of blown my mind a bit. I have to pinch myself that it's happening. I mean, obviously I'm also a huge fan of Gwyneth. I think she's extraordinarily brave. I think that she could have easily, I mean, you're going to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
You know, she's absolutely stunning. She's got a great bod. She's got this amazing lifestyle back then you know, when she started Goop with an international rock star. You just don't need to be the person that goes and talks about vagina. She could easily have just stayed at home. And I think she's brave. And I get very cross. I actually get incredibly cross with the negative press that she gets. I think it's spiteful and it's bullying, because she is creating a forum where women may be able to identify. She's not going to be identifiable for everyone. She's just not. But she is someone who potentially could have been quite reserved and isn't. And that's brave, really, really brave. But I love the fact that we've got an international following. So people send me text messages and DMs. They slide into my DMs. I reply to everything. I love it. They slide into my DMs in languages that I don't even know what they are. I have to put them into Babe. I have to copy and paste it. Be like, where is this country from? And that makes me really excited to have a global community of women who, and they feed back as well. Like, I don't feel like the Happy Vagina is mine. Nobody take me to court. That's not an open invitation for lawsuits.
No, but it is a collective. And this is why I'm saying, you know, because you have obviously an online community and the podcast, women in all areas of the world can listen in. You know, you can't stop somebody from listening in. So if they need that education and then possibly might not get it at school or in their home life, they can listen into you and choose to listen into your platform and get that education about their bodies, about what's happening. And that is so empowering, to be able to reach that many young women, young men, girls, boys, who just to be able to provide them with that education that they're probably not getting is such an incredible tool.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We do also have to remember that there are parts of the world where for example, the internet just recently has been taken down in
Mm-hmm.
China. And in India, you just were talking about period shame. In India, women are still not allowed to, so they can listen to my podcast, but in India, when they're menstruating, they're not allowed to cook or pray or study. So it's for me, I'm as excited as we're discussing, and I also feel politically it's actually still a very important project. So there's my excitement for the women that are already free, and then I just feel like there's so much more work to do, Natalie, because people, women and men globally, are still not equal and not free, and it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not what God wanted for us.
Yeah, your point there about when we were talking about liberation and being able to talk about sex and being able to talk about, again, self-love, masturbation. People didn't talk about this thing, and especially
Oh,
not in the mainstream. And I think it's really important. There was an amazing scene in Little Fires Everywhere with Reese Witherspoon, and she was at the book club, and they said, "You've never seen your vagina?" She was like, "No." She was like,
yeah.
really, like, that scene. And then she's laughing. She goes up to the bathroom and she starts having a look, and she's laughing her head off. But I loved that scene in that particular drama series because I just
Yeah.
thought, again, pushing the boundaries, getting it into the mainstream,
Yeah.
getting people to ask questions. Because if we don't know our own bodies, then we don't necessarily know when something's wrong.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's the overriding message in everything I do, is if you don't know yourself, your body, your mind, how can you know if there's something wrong?
Yeah, I mean, going back to Amika George, and oh, sorry, no, actually, I just have to pull you up on this one because this is an amazing thing that I read that you wrote for Grazia, that only 2.5% of publicly funded research is pledged to reproductive health, and that there is 5 times more research into erectile dysfunction, which affects only 90% of men, than premenstrual syndrome, which affects 90% of women. I could not
Insane.
believe this gender health gap. It
I
was just
know.
unbelievable. I mean,
I
what are your
know.
thoughts on that?
I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. So those are just a couple of statistics. There's a long list of statistics. I have just started a campaign with Nimco Ali. So Nimco Ali and I are co-chairs of a board, the Ginsburg Women's Health Board, which we named after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is
Yes.
potentially a bit, I mean, she's an American, but we thought we'd adopt her. I'm sure wherever she is, she appreciates it. And we are working towards closing the gender health gap. The gender health gap is in place and part of our lives. It's terrible in the UK. It's terrible in other parts of the world too. But you'd think in the UK, where actually women are pretty liberated, it wouldn't be, but it's terrible. And the reason is that women aren't included in scientific research. And the reason they're not included in scientific, well, I we could be angry. I'm not really into smashing the patriarchy. Like what you're talking about is a system that was put in place that has been oppressive for women. We can smash it, yes. We definitely need, I would say we need to right size it.
Yes, that's a nice way of putting it.
And we and it does need to change, but I think that there needs to be a tenderness and an understanding of what has gone before us. So one of the reasons why women were not included in scientific research is because we are the ones that bring life into the world. And there was a experiment that was done, or some scientific research that was done, where it had a devastating effect on the future of women's ability to get pregnant. So then the medics decide that they won't put women in. So, I mean, that's just one example. There are also some devastating facts about only male mice being used to test things. So there is definitely a genuine imbalance in the way that we come to providing statistics on diagnosing illness, because that's one of the main issues is how things are diagnosed. Women's issues aren't diagnosed properly, they're not fast tracked well enough, and then the medications aren't ready to fit our bodies because they're tested on men. So those are the three kind of main areas that create the gender health gap. And we could bash the past, or we can go, that's what it was, and let's do something about it now. So Nimco and I are doing something about it now, and we're just going to try and make as much noise as possible to make sure, again, that the government stay focused on their pledge that they made last International Women's Day to help close the gender health gap, to provide better healthcare for women and all women. We're working very, very much at an NHS level. This is fundamentally about women who really need the help.
I mean, you're absolutely right, because I've talked a lot about this on this podcast, a lot, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. But, in terms of research and in terms of understanding women's reproductive health, and we get taught so much about puberty, so much about pregnancy, and then we have the perimenopause, which so many women know nothing about, and then you might hear a little bit more when you hit the menopause. But the perimenopause kind of phase for me, I'm so angry that I'm not prepared, because it will happen to me in like the coming years, and I feel so cross that I've already got friends of mine that are complaining of, they're telling me that their mood swings are becoming different as they're approaching into their 40s, or they're in their mid 40s and their bodies are slightly changing, but they've been diagnosed of having depression, put on antidepressants. I find it makes me so cross that there is not enough out there about this next phase of life, which then kind of adds to that idea and that stigma that once you reach a certain age, you're invisible. How do you feel
Invisible.
about that?
Invisible. I mean, I do think that is kind of what can happen. I think I'm excited for women in the sense that there are strong statistics to show that women are now having their best time in their 50s. So I'm grateful that I'm living in this time where we can sit here and talk about peri and menopausal periods in our lives, and that, women like Andrea McLean and Meg Matthews, the work they're doing is just charging forwards and leading the way for us to not be uneducated if you want to educate yourself. And there's also a lot of work being done at government level in terms of adding these things to school curriculum. So I guess how I feel about it is I'm hopeful, but I suppose I'm kind of in the middle of it every day, and I've got people around me talking about it, so I do know that change is happening and coming. I think the thing that makes me most sad is that we can put a man on the moon, but we don't have the right test, and even that we can create a virus for a pandemic, quite rightly, so quickly, but that this period of time for women, the menopause, is not diagnosed properly. I was having some irregular periods and some mood swings, actually just before the pandemic. I wasn't feeling myself, and it turns out I had a bacterial infection, so there was something going on, but it wasn't perimenopause. But I just remember going to see them. I was told to go and see this particular doctor, and they just gave me a standard prescription of progesterone and estrogen, and I haven't taken it, actually, because I'm like, I'm not, unless you thoroughly research me, do my bloods, look at absolutely everything that's going on in my body, and give me a diagnostic that is deeply suited to me and what's going on in my life. Unless you do that, I'm not going to start putting drugs in my body. I'm just not.
Again, I completely agree with you. I've had friends that have been prescribed antidepressants because they've been told that, oh, you're depressed, and these women are not depressed. They're like, isn't it, I find it very odd that all of the, every time that these moments happen to me, it happens to be mid-cycle,
Yeah.
and it's the same every month.
Yeah.
And yet
Yeah.
they'll voice that to the doctors, and that's just not being heard.
Yeah.
And I find that so frustrating. I mean, we've spoke to Dr. Larissa Corder, who's an amazing fertility doctor,
Yes.
about this on the podcast last year, and she was just saying we need to campaign more, we need to get out there, we kind of need I was like, when you hit 35, you should be given a leaflet, a pamphlet to say you need to go in for this, and this. Never mind waiting until you're 50 or whatever it is. I want to know in our mid-30s, so that just as you would prepare your body if you were hoping to get pregnant, I want to know about these things now. I agree with you, though. I am hopeful about the younger generation, because you do have amazing people like Amika George, who is campaigning to end period poverty. And I do feel hopeful. And it's really interesting to hear that you do feel the same, that we are coming into a new phase.
Just my attitude towards life is if you count your blessings, that's how more blessings get made. There's definitely a time and place for anger. And I think that when things are really wrong and people are being bullied, or the system is bullying and squashing a particular tribe or type of human being, then sometimes anger is appropriate to make change and necessary to make change. But mostly, I kind of feel very strongly that what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said was right, which is that fight for the things you care for, but do it in a way that people will come with you. And this is an exciting time for everyone. We can sit here and be cross about the fact that that women weren't allowed to be doctors for all those years, and so therefore our medical system has been created by men, blah blah blah. Well, so what? It happened. It happened. So what are we going to do about it, and how are we going to make change? And actually, I don't believe that men want to keep it there. There's this kind of like weird perception that somehow they're the antichrist that want to keep us in this kind of oppressive position. I think the men quite up for maybe staying at home a bit more, and equality for them as well. It's been very oppressive. The system has been very oppressive for men too. That the alpha male, that the male who has to go out and provide, which is the antithesis to the woman that must stay at home. So I do feel hopeful, and I do feel mostly that if you want to campaign and you want to be an activist, the best way to do it, again, unless you're really on the rock face, the best way to do it is to do it in a way that people feel like they can join you, and that you're including people, and that it's an intelligent, insightful conversation that inspires people rather than makes people feel bad about themselves because maybe they did think that a year before,
Yes, completely. And as you said then, I love the idea of it's something that, I'm very open with my husband. We talk an awful lot, and I think it's so important to include him all the time with like what's going on with my body and everything, because I just think that knowledge is power ultimately. And if he's aware of me and I'm aware of him, that creates for a much better relationship. And we're educating a young 8-year-old boy as well, and so equally we want to raise a young man that when he has a partner or whichever, he's open.
Yes.
And he's understanding, and that's kind of what we want.
Yes, but also, Natalie, a friend of mine, I suppose it must have been International Women's Day last year. It was last year. Her son was invited to Wembley. There was a big day at Wembley. It was an Earth Day, I think. So it wasn't an International Women's Day, but it was around that time. And she told me that this young man came home devastated because all of the chat on stage and all of the kind of like cheering from this enormous stadium full of young people, of children, was about girl power.
Oh.
And he was frightened and he felt left out. And to me, I'm like, what's the point in that? That's not freedom. As I said when we started this conversation, that's just swinging the other way. This is a time to raise children to be, as you are with your son, to be deeply, deeply respectful of human beings around them, and the individual. Ask people questions, see what they're interested in. Don't just assume. Let people be who they are at the very deepest level. And I really hope that because of women like you raising your son in the way that you are, that will be the future for us in this country.
I do. I really hope so as well. It's kind of, it's very high up on my agenda. Obviously, the podcast and your charity are extremely important to you alongside your acting work. But what is next on the agenda for the Happy Vagina? Where are you wanting to see this grow to?
Oh, it's so exciting. Well, we're just recording season 3, so we've booked all the guests in for that, and we've got some amazing people coming on. We've got Amika George, and
amazing!
and a female feminist pornographer, Swedish, called Erika Lust, it's just an amazing episode. And Nimco Ali is going to come on and talk about FGM. It's something that I feel so important. Mm-hmm. So we're in the middle of starting to record that. We've got some really other exciting guests that I can't say yet coming on. And we're just sort of thinking about how to grow and where we want to be in a year's time, because I'm only a year old. So actually we started a year ago, and I feel I knew there was something there, because again, a bit like with Lady God, and the God nods have been happening. I say, can I talk to you about this? And people just say yes. And, it's like, that's how you know. Mm-hmm. If you get too many no's, you start thinking maybe you're on the wrong track. This is not
right. Yeah.
You're trying to slay in the wrong lane.
Yeah.
So I knew that, but I think a year in, I've landed, and I've gone, okay, this project works. People love it. I love it. What can we do? So Olivia, who works with me on it, and I are just having conversations, and we're talking about campaigns and different things, and really thinking about what we can do to help others, We are going to definitely be bringing out a couple of more. So I had the coming soon pants
Yes.
last year.
So amazing.
For last year, and there's a couple more cheeky products like that, which again, the money just goes back into the community. So I don't get paid for anything on the Happy Vagina, and I'm really happy with that at the moment. I'm just basically giving all of my energy to it, and any money from sales of products like those we put back into the community to work out what it is we can do to help women be more aligned with their true self and freer. So yeah.
I love it. I'd like to see you out on the road as well at some point. That would be interesting if we're allowed.
Well, people keep asking if I could take it into schools, and we have had conversations around it. But the truth is that I enjoy the Instagram's quite rock and roll, and I don't think I want to. I mean, just literally 2 weeks ago, I think Zoella got her contract taken away with the education system because she talked about she put a vibrator on her website.
Yeah.
And that confirmed my feeling that this actually is a project for adult women. So from I'd say from 15 up. We're not doing anything that's offensive or that a mother would not want her daughter to learn from us rather than her. But I'm not sure we're going to go into the education. And I've got a book deal, so I'm in the middle of writing the Happy Vagina book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is so brilliant. Do you have any idea of dates when that will be out?
At the moment, it's in for June 2022. So
amazing.
Congratulations.
That's such fabulous news.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. I mean, whatever. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but I've said it. It's out there.
It's out there.
You can pre-order from you can't pre-order yet. I haven't even written it yet.
You've got to write it, yeah. But before we, have to finish up today, I've just caught the time. Before you have to finish up, I want to know from you, what are your top tips for a happy vagina?
My top tips. Gosh, masturbation.
Yes.
Really know your body. So be accepting of your body as it is and don't hide from it. It does change. There are different smells. Things are going to go wrong, particularly if you're sexually active, if you have more than one partner, not necessarily even at the same time. And just really allow yourself to be present and not full of shame around that. And then actually my third tip is eat well, which I know might sound like a really obvious thing, but I think that our bodies really and our gynecological area really respond well to a really good, sustained, clean diet. And I think that's my number 3, but number 1 is definitely self-pleasure.
Yes. Mum, can you believe I had this conversation today? Oh, Mika, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. Ladies, you heard it here. If you're not already acquainted, then get to know your vagina. I hope you've enjoyed being with us today and that you're able to take away some really helpful advice. If you'd like to know more about the Happy Vagina community and podcast, then please head to www.thehappyvagina.com. You can also follow the Lady Garden Foundation at www.ladygardenfoundation.com for more information on gynecological cancers. If you'd like more well-being, fashion and beauty, then as always you can visit us at our website www.thecapsule.co.uk, where you can also catch up with our previous podcast episodes by visiting our In Conversation page and subscribing to any of our podcast channels on YouTube. Do leave us your rates and reviews. Please whack those 5 stars on if you can. It's always amazing to read them and to see your lovely comments. If you're a social butterfly, you can also catch us on Instagram and Facebook at Official Capsule. I will be back next week with another very special guest. So all that's left for us to say today is have an amazing International Women's Day tomorrow and goodbye. So it's goodbye from Mika.
Thanks for having me, Nat. This has been an amazing opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And goodbye from me, guys. This episode of The Capsule in Conversation was brought to you by Harrogate Spring Water. Bottled at source, Harrogate Spring offers a pure, refreshing taste with a delicate blend of naturally occurring minerals and electrolytes. Perfect for healthy hydration.